So if you depend on Vedana, for your happiness, for your security, then you're going to find there's nothing there, only suffering. When you investigate those khandhas, you find that the way that Vedana works, as you've heard me say before, is just this constant interplay, mostly between suffering and happiness, where happiness is just a gap between two moments of suffering. Suffering just a gap between two moments of happiness. So whenever you're suffering, always remember that this is the forerunner of happiness. Whenever you're happy, remember that this is the prelude to suffering. And look at that. When you look at that with a mind which is able to see the truth rather than just see what you want to see, you see that that's the nature of our life. Just look at happiness and suffering through each one of the senses. Beauty and ugliness, nice sounds, rotten sounds, taste, smells, feelings in the body. Whenever you've got a headache, when the headache goes, you feel happy. If you're sick now, the suffering of the sickness is directly related to the health you had before. You can't have one without the other. And the mind states you have, the joy and the suffering in the mind, aren't they codependent on each other? Isn't one just a passing away of the other? You see the play of Vedana, the dependence on causes. They're unreliable. Wouldn't it be a wonderful thing to see that all Vedana is completely unreliable? You can't rely upon that for your fulfillment. You cannot make Vedana a goal of your life. You cannot aspire to heaven in any form, in any realm, in any way or means. Because the idea of heaven becomes completely irrational, just cannot exist. Vedana is always changing, coming and going. Well, this is a satipatthana, this is a contemplation of a khandha. In that third satipatthana, it's contemplating the citta, contemplating the rise and the fall, the appearance and the complete disappearance of citta, according to satipatthana taught by the Lord Buddha. This is seeing the impermanence even in citta. This is one of the satipatthanas which not many people do. They don't do it because a prerequisite, I always say it's a prerequisite of all satipatthanas, but it's an obvious prerequisite to all for the third satipatthana of Chittanusati to have jhanas, because otherwise you just have got no clue what citta is. It's citta. What is it? In the practice of anapanasati, you get to know the citta as a nimitta reflected in the mind. This is how you see the citta. If you haven't got nimitta, stable, clear, beautiful, you've got no way of knowing what the nimitta is. You can speculate, you can think, you can read and infer from other people, but that's not knowing of it yourself. And if you just rely on other people's teachings, so often you'll misinterpret and miss the point. One has to go to the very experience of these things, the experience of mind, pure mind. As I've mentioned in a simile some years ago, it's like a person who wants to find out what gold is. You have to rid the gold of all the other impurities, all the other elements which can deceive you about the true quality of that metal, gold. You've got to heat it up, get rid of all the dross, all the other stuff which is mixed in with that gold. And when you get pure gold, just gold, nothing else but gold, then you can know what its properties are. In the same way that citta, mind, you've got to get rid of all the other stuff before you can know what citta really is. You have to get rid of the 5 senses. Allow them completely disappear. So you've just got mind and nothing but mind. And then you can actually see how it works and what it is. And one of the experiences which you should be able to reflect upon after a jhana is that these citta is not a continuous flow, it's particular, like grains of sand on a beach. If you look at it from a distance, you think it's a continuous flow of sand. But if you look a bit closer, you can find these little bits with spaces in between. Citta arises. Citta passes away. Spaces between the falling away and the arising of the next citta. These are not things which are easy to see. These are things which one has to see through deep samadhi. That's why this is called the reflection of anicca. You can't depend upon that citta. It's unreliable. You can't hold your hat, put your hat on that. You cannot hang anything on it, because it's always moving, disappearing, giving the illusion of a continuous knower, either in a coarse form or a fine form. But if you look deeper, you'll see it's nothing continuous there at all. Just a rising and a falling. It's subject to cessation. It's subject to disappearing, to going. That's why in the sutta we just chanted, the Dhammacakka Sutta, the realization of the stream winner, yang kinchi samudaya dhammang, all that which is of the nature to arise, sabbantang nirodha dhammanti, all of that is of the nature to cease, to disappear, to go. You see that with the citta as well. You see that with sanya, these perceptions which we take to be so real. The perception which informs the mind and gives it some way of holding on to this world and describing it. All those perceptions which we believe in. There's a great connection between perception and language. That's when we see the impermanence, the unreliability, the undependability of sanya, that we get to be less concerned about language and thoughts and concepts and ideas. It's one of the helpful experiences of my education to have come across, to have studied something like theoretical physics and come across first of all teachings such as relativity theory, because that's changed your perceptions. And you started to have to really work with perceptions to be able to understand that sort of stuff. That you had this perception, this worldview, the way of looking at the world, of this universe just being like this sphere going off into infinity in all directions. And then you were taught, and it was explained and proved beyond any doubt, that this universe is curved, that space curves. And first of all, you thought not actually space being curved, but things in space being curved, like pathways curving around within space. But that wasn't what this was talking about. This was actually the space itself was curved, was bent. You go in a straight line, a perfect straight line. And if it's a closed universe, you come right back to where you started from. It was a way of perceiving which went against my training. You had to look at things in a different way. You came across quantum theory, where again your perceptual apparatus was stretched to the limit, were broken and reformed, to be able to understand that sort of stuff. What it was actually showing you was just the limits of this thing which we call perception. Our perception is constructed in our schooling, by our parents, by our friends, by our reading. There's nothing substantial to it. There's nothing real and truthful, dependable in your perception. You can perceive things one way today and perceive it in another way the following day. And if you're unfortunate like me and all your talks get taped, you find yourself contradicting yourself. It's not contradicting yourself, it's just perception changing, that's all. It's anicca, impermanent, not dependable. When you actually start to see the fact you cannot depend upon your perception, it's unreliable. What does that do? Because your whole world starts to fade and disappear. Ideas, concepts, ways of looking at things start to melt away. And you get into like a form of emptiness there. Because of the unreliability of perception, something so basic to existence, you can't depend upon anything at all. It's as if like the floor on which you're sitting just disappears. You've got nothing to stand on. You're letting go. Things are disappearing. The whole process is unwinding and stopping. Sometimes that people can think like this, they can follow those sorts of ideas, and it gets weird and wonderful. But they find they can't really do it because it's not really coming from the place of seeing, it's coming from the place of thinking. They're not stopping the perceptions, they're just getting another perception. And these ways of investigating the khandhas and seeing they're unreliable, they come and they go. One perception arises and then it disappears. Which one is the right one, which is the wrong one? They're just perceptions, that's all. The same as the sankharas. The fourth of the khandhas. All these thoughts and ideas. Everything you've ever thought, where's it come from? Why do you think this way and not another way? And why are you so stupid to think that your thoughts are correct? At last I've got it right. How many times in your life have you thought that way? At last I've got it right. Yeah, this is the right way. This is the right religion. This is the right path. This is right. Later on to be proved that you're wrong. I don't know how many times I've said in here that you cannot rely upon the thinking process. But the thing is that people think that that's true and they rely upon that thought again, rather than letting go of all the thoughts. Just like the simile of space being curved. It's the whole background is curved, not just what goes on in there. It's not just the objects being curved, it's a subject being curved as well. This is one of the problems with actually seeing anicca. You want to find a place which is nicca to see anicca. You take out some part of the world, some part of the universe, some part of the mind. You say, this is permanent, this is me, this is a self, the ultimate ground of all being. And you can accept everything else is anicca, but not this. And this which you take to be permanent, first one is the will, the doer.